Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, I think we can get started. So welcome to the Akri March Community Meeting. We'll be abiding by the CNCF Code of Conduct, and this will be recorded. So if you don't consent, please hop off. And before we begin, if everyone could remember to put their names down on the attendee section of the meeting notes, which I just put in the chat. Awesome. So to get started with a quick announcement, Kate posted this in the Slack, but me and Francisco, who's on my team at Microsoft working on WASMs, will be giving a talk on connecting to devices at the edge with very small footprint using Akri and WASMs and AKS Edge Essentials. So, if you're attending WASM.io, please be sure to attend the session. I think it'll be interesting and we'll have a demo at the end. So the next thing is I think we should talk about aiming for a new release soon. So for our end, I think we're trying to get some changes upstreamed by the end of this month. And so I'm thinking maybe we can aim for a new release like the beginning of April so that we have time to bug bash and test everything. So I can help put together a little bug bash as well. Are there specific items that we should be focusing on or like specific issues that we definitely want to resolve for the next release?
I think there have been some issues in Slack, and I think resolving user issues should be a priority before any release.
Yeah, so I know we have 555 is something that we wanted to solve. There's also 450, which is modifying the agent to reduce the frequency of pods getting an unexpected emission error. Yeah, so I think we can definitely work to prioritize those. And then do you know if there are any updates on splitting up the repos? I know that some people had volunteered to take a look at them. I forget which issue number that is. And then, yeah, I think we were also previously, we talked about some issues that we wanted to solve as like an OKR for the next like KubeCon. So I think it would also be good to prioritize those.
Do you mind reminding us of those?
Yes. Let me scroll down.
And while you're doing that, I've got an engineer who's trying to get into the call and he gets something saying basically he needs to sign in with the account that received an invitation by email.
I think
Yeah.
that's just a general Slack Zoom thing. You need to be logged
Gotcha.
in. So he can just log in with any Zoom account he has, no matter what, and he should be able to hop on.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, please bring it back up if that's not the case. I just ran into that because I wasn't logged in, and then I just logged in with one of my accounts and was able to come in.
I don't think I knew that I was logged in, so apparently I am.
So it looks like I'm having trouble sharing screen because it's telling me I need to create host. And I don't have the host key. Because I know that Audie was working on getting us like a CNCF account. but we haven't figured out how we can log in because it requires a 2FA code. Okay, do you have a host key or?
You definitely have the host key somewhere. And there should be a OneNote that has the host key there. But I just pinged Audie to share it, but yeah.
Yes.
So I guess to carry the release conversation, I don't think splitting up repos needs to be a priority for a release. I think that is something that we said we were going to do, and should definitely keep checking in on our status on that. I do think that there is an issue that I was mentioning in Slack around UDEV and that discovery handler. And I think it would be nice to get to the bottom of that. In particular, it's Michael who has brought up this issue, and he's been interested in using Akri. And I think, continuing to support him on that would be helpful. So I know, Andrew, you've had experience with UDEB. If you've run into anything he's running into, that's super helpful to share. But it sounds like it might be related to device mounts, which is something that we don't do, but should consider doing. And so I can talk a little bit about that, and we do have an issue about it, but that might be something to consider before a release. But essentially with Akri, we mount devices with UDEB. So anything in that /dev path as a mount, not as a device spec. So the device plugin interface has two different categories of how you give access to a container to something. And device specs, has the same first fields of container path and host path. So the path that the container sees and the path that's actually on the physical host, but also has this third option of being able to set permissions of how to use that device. So I think it adds more fine-grained controls, but we would need to add that ability to specify what access you would like. So read, write, modify, access within a configuration. So there is a little bit of thought that needs to go around it, but I do think that's something interesting to keep in mind for folks who are interested in the UDEV side of things.
Is that issue? I have some issues. So it looks like we have 3 issues from the OKRs that are still open. So is this what you were just talking about?
No, it is not.
Okay, that was.
But it's fine. We can go ahead and we can leave what I just said as maybe an announcement or call for action and just let it be.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think the stuff that Michael's running into, I don't know that it has an issue associated with it.
Got it.
Do you think it's just the permissions that his broker has are different from that of the agent, for example, or that his brokers are just not? Yeah, because it seems like something like they're being mounted.
Yeah, so I ran into the same issue once. Because apparently in my demo setup, I had set basically the pod as everything is permissive, so I didn't run into anything because I wouldn't have. And it only becomes an issue when you're trying to run in a more confined security context. And so so I think it probably is that permissions issue. I think Nicholas has a PR that potentially solves it, and we're working on figuring out how to automate some tests against this type of thing in a lab. So
Awesome. That's great to hear. And yeah, it sounds like we should do some more bug bashing. So that might be a good bug bash for a release is let's figure out how Akri's brokers are affected by changing the permissions of those brokers, and maybe add that as a bug bash entry. So at least we know what is the expected experience, and we're able to say, hey, yeah, this isn't, you need to have more permissive brokers for this reason, and that's obviously an issue, and these are issues that we're working on.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Um, Anything else on that topic? So this is another UDEV issue that we were maybe hoping to complete by the next KubeCon. It looks like no one has been assigned, but there's been some conversation around it. Do we want to maybe assign someone to this? Is anyone interested in investigating this issue?
I think Nicholas actually did this. There's a linked PR. So we should just get a PR review and see if it, well, one, if, I don't know if he's done or not, but. And he's trying to join the call, so he's waiting on all the.
Is it still not
Apparently,
letting him in?
yeah.
Wow.
Well, Zoom apparently can't send him the email because Zoom's having issues sending emails right now. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
if and when he's able to join, he'll be able to give a little bit more context to this.
Great, that sounds good. Yeah, so for the issue, we can assign Nicholas to it. But already the issue should link the PR by default, so.
Yeah, okay, so let's go to this one, reduce the size of Akri's containers. I know Audie had started looking into this. He wasn't able to join today because of a conflict, but I will check in on him on the progress for this. And then finally, we have enable mounting connectivity information for multiple devices instances in a pod. So I think, yeah, Johnson volunteered to work on this. And just read the context. Yeah, so I know that Johnson's been working on some configuration level resource stuff, and then on top of that, I think he has this like proposed solutions. So I think this should be okay.
So Eugen, to circle back, you mentioned that there were several changes that y'all wanted to upstream by the end of the month. Are these those 3 changes, or are there other ones beyond these 3?
Yeah, so let me go back to that. I know that Johnson's already made a PR on this. So this is configuration level device plugin. And we basically want to make it so that people can deploy like an end-to-end mapping of devices to brokers. So you might be able to deploy multiple brokers for a device or one broker for multiple devices. So this is one of them. And then the authentication stuff, which I think we had proposed. I think we can find that in the docs. So we'll also be working on making it so that on-with cameras can be like authenticated through Akri. So we also wanted to get that in before. Secret management. So yeah, I think those two are the main things that we wanted to get in. And then is there anything else that you were thinking about?
No, I think just figuring out what's being prioritized and who's reviewing things will be helpful.
Yeah,
We have a lot of PRs and issues that have been up sitting there. And I don't know how we want to go about getting things reviewed essentially.
oh, looks like Nick was able to join. Welcome. So Nick, are you there? Oh, there you are. We wanted to learn more about the work that you did here. It looks like this was one of the issues that we have been prioritizing, and looks like you made a PR recently. Do you want to talk a little about this?
Yes. So I tried to implement a way to group devices that belongs to, well, nodes of the same device is more appropriate. My use case was a keyboard touchpad combo. So the way I did that is to, well, in UDEV, the devices are seen as a tree, and so if the rule you're writing matches multiple elements that are parent of each other, then they will be grouped together as one instance in Akri with multiple mounts for every node, and with multiple then environment variables to get all the related information.
Yeah, I think first of all, nice to meet you, Nicholas. I think this also is interesting because it intersects with the previous issue that Eugen mentioned about how do we add device information and mounts for multiple devices. So with this one, you took the approach of adding a property suffix, so UDEV dev node property suffix. So I think we just want to make sure that that's aligned with I think what Johnson's been working on. I think it's Johnson who's been doing.
Yeah.
And so
And,
I'm just gonna drop.
I
Sorry,
didn't.
go ahead.
I did not. Well, talk with him, but I think that's two unrelated kind of issues because all the I use the suffix because it's the easiest way to do that, but they all are the same instance, and from what I've seen in the other issue, it's more of having different well, having different Akri instances in the same pod. So that's not exactly the same kind of well, in fact, you can have multiple instances that have multiple nodes, and you'll have both that get, well, appended in a way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get what you're saying there in the sense that it's technically the same instance and all mounts are going within one device plugin. I think the only thing that I was thinking was similar is this idea of how we're using environment variables to point to dev paths might be something that we want to keep uniform, but I agree, it's not blocking. It might just inform Johnson's decision a little bit, but that's a good follow-up. I think my only question with it is I haven't taken a deep look at it yet, but just figuring out if this is broad enough to cover a lot of the ways that people want to group UDEV devices, or for example, say someone wanted maybe a speaker that has basically the whole sound device directory. Could we do something similar? Is there a common parent of that we could use for that? Or would we need to take a different approach for something like that?
Usually, well, there's always a common parent when it's the same physical device. But it can be hard to find the relevant UDEV rule that will match. So that's why I prefer this way rather than finding a common property or something, because with this way of grouping, you can have multiple rules that will match only some parts of the device, and if they're under the same tree, they'll still be grouped. So I think you can always find a way to get the device you need in the same group.
Great. Well, this sounds good to me. I'm definitely interested in taking a bigger look at it too. But I think this is something that we could add to the bug bash for a release for beginning of April. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this, Nicholas?
Well, the only thing I wanted to add is I just did the EPA right away. I don't know if that's the right way of doing things usually. I've seen there's also proposals and things like that, but I found this to be quite small, so I preferred it that way.
In my opinion, I think this was totally fine, especially because it was attached to a specific issue. I think if it didn't even have an issue, I think the first step would maybe be creating an issue. And then, as you mentioned, we sometimes do proposals. And I think that is for more, like you mentioned, larger issues and larger changes. So for example, there's a pull request up right now for the concept of creating configuration level resources. So you could say, I want to video cameras, and that would map down to dev/video and do that for you. So I think that's something that would need maybe a larger proposal, which it has, while this is, in my opinion, totally fine to just point to an issue.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Nicholas. All right. Is there anything else on the release that we should discuss?
I think just solidifying, do we want to do a bug bash and when we want to do that, so that we know when to have everything merged by.
Yeah, so should we say bug bash like in the beginning of April? Because I know that we are trying to get these changes in by the end of March. I don't know if we wanted to have some time between to make sure, or we can also just try to aim for end of March. What do you think?
Well, our next community meeting is the first Tuesday of April, so why don't we aim to kick it off then? So we can aim to have like a scenarios document then, and walk through what those scenarios are going to be and call for any extra scenarios. And then that can be a good time to, ask people to try it out and drop that in Slack as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, I can also help put together this information stuff and aim to have it on the next community meeting. All right, is there anything else like that people want to talk about. We didn't have much else on the agenda.
I have a kind of practical point. I'm in Europe, and this is kind of late for me. These community meetings. Would it be possible to have them? I don't know, maybe 1 hour earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of other projects sometimes will have 2 different times for meetings, so maybe one that's like APAC and one that's more US based time, and then one in between for more Central Europe time zones. I personally am fine with going earlier. I think we could, I think this is a lot of the group that tends to be in the calls, so we can take a preliminary vote this way and then maybe just put it in Slack to see a quick vote if people are okay with moving it 1 hour earlier. Do other people have thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'm open to moving this earlier as well.
Would 1 hour, so you're saying, Nicholas, 1 hour would be a good touch, or is that so close for you?
1 hour early would be nice. I think middle ground, because
Okay.
it's the end of the day, but not too far in the evening.
Great. That sounds good to me. So I'll put an action item on me to put it in Slack just to ask, basically say, hey, we're thinking of moving the meeting 1 hour earlier to accommodate earlier times or later time zones, and then just see if anyone has thumbs downs on that idea.
Yeah, that sounds good. Anything else, like any other questions people might have, any concerns they want to bring up?
I guess just an announcement. I think it'd be nice we have a lot of features that we're going to start working on. So I think it'd be nice maybe to try to have a demo during our community meetings. So for example, maybe at the next community meeting, I would love to see like Nicholas, your touchpad, all one device demo, maybe. Obviously demos are work, so always optional, but that would be fun to have to kind of see what we're all doing outside of the text of GitHub.
Yeah, sure.
I like it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think if we can, like, I can try to put together a demo for maybe our authentication work that we're doing as well. I think that would be cool to demo. All right, so with that, maybe we can move to issue triage since we weren't able to do it last week. Harrison, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I can take over. Hi, everyone. So let me share my screen. Okay. So I guess I'll drag all the open issues to triage needed first, and then we can talk about those. Okay, guess we can go through it one by one since we have time. So this is the first one, provide mechanism for tidy node allocate capacity. And
Just to add some context on this issue is really old, as you can see.
It's like 2020. Yeah.
Daz was one of our first community contributors and contributed the Akri webhook, which is actually not really used. But we do have a webhook for verifying configurations before they're applied to the cluster if anyone's interested. But basically, what happens with Akri is we create device plugins on your node. And what that means when you do when you inspect your node, just with kubectl, for example, you'll see all of the resources that are available, and it'll show like how much has been allocated and the capacity. And even once Akri gets rid of that device plugin, that isn't cleaned up. So it'll be 0, like you won't be able to use it, but in your node, you'll see all these devices that once were usable and allocatable, but no longer are. And so it looks really gross. It doesn't affect anything in the sense of you can't actually use those devices. The allocatable capacity of them is 0, but it doesn't, for example, right here, look great. So it would be nice to have a script that essentially it just inspects your node and it modifies it to remove all the ones that no longer exist in the least, just so that people could run it maybe as a cron job and periodically clean up their nodes. But also open to even better ideas. And part of this stems from the fact that the device plugin interface doesn't have a deallocate functionality. You can only allocate, you can't say, we no longer want to use this device.
Okay, that sounds good. So I guess I can drag this one to backlog maybe. And if anyone is interested in working on that, because it sounds like we're not really touching the core work. It's more like writing a script on the side to clean up. So maybe we can see if anyone's interested, we can post it on the Slack channels later. Yeah, so the second one, oh, this one's from yesterday. So how to configure multiple custom discovery handlers. And seems like currently we only support one custom entry, and maybe this is like a feature ask to have multiple custom discovery handler all at the same time.
So in my opinion, I think this is a documentation issue.
Mhm.
So when I think our documentation says, hey, you want to create a custom discovery handler, this is how you use our Helm templates. And what it spits out is a Helm template for a discovery handler called custom. You could very well rename that and create multiple discovery handlers. We have support for many discovery handlers. So I think the response to this just needs to be helping them work through that process.
Right. Oh, so our Helm, I guess, custom is just an example that we name the discovery handler. We can have multiple of them as long as we have all the requirements for the discovery handler. We can just name them in different ways in the Helm chart, right?
Yeah, so it's just that we needed to name the template something, and in the walkthrough we say it's called custom. But what the agent does is it has a registration endpoint that it's constantly listening for. So it listens and a discovery handler says, hi, my name is, call me when you want to use me. And so what's happening here is this person's saying, hi, my name is custom, call me if you want to use me. And then it wants to do that again with a different type of discovery handler, but it's not changing the name. So it's saying, hi, my name is custom. And Akri's probably saying, we already have custom. So they could just change the name to whatever it actually does. So maybe, I don't know if it's ideally it would be something like Modbus or something cool that we don't have yet. Then it would say like, I'm the Modbus discovery handler. And the other one could say, I'm the MQTT discovery handler. And so it just needs to change its name.
Okay, sounds good. That would be a document issue.
I
Let's
think it's
see.
first just responding to this issue.
Okay.
Because an issue itself is a document, like documentation. But yeah, we also should maybe in the bug bash, we can vet that documentation as well.
Okay. I can quickly reply to him. So
I would just directly give a call to action to change the name of their discovery handler in their configuration and in their implementation to be something other than custom.
Okay, so.
Thanks, Harrison.
Yep. This one, I guess I'll still put in backlog since we do need to change the documentation later on.
Yeah, I think we can keep working through it and maybe they can help us understand how the documentation would have better explained this.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so the next one is discovery handlers called for the first time after a minute from agent. So it looks like it is a ask to configure the delay to when the agent can call the discovery handler. I see. So I don't think we currently support that, right? I think calling the discovery handler is something the agent does automatically. And looks like we want to have this one to be another feature where we can, I guess, start and stop the discovery handler whenever the user wants.
I don't remember off the top of my head what our delay is here, but it sounds like a feature request for whatever it is, shortening it. So I think figuring out whether this is a feature or a bug is the first step. I haven't looked at this part of the code in a while, so I'm not sure. One thing I'm wondering is if this has to do with deleting a Akri installation and restarting it. Sometimes there can be an issue with that, in the sense that the agent may not be fully shut down and the discovery handler will come up and it'll register with the old agent that the cluster is bringing down and then need to re-register with the new agent. But it sounds like this is an issue with being used after registering. So I think we need more investigation here, but and the call to action is making it configurable if it can be.
Okay, so I'll put this one to investigating. Should I leave a comment to this one? For like saying we will try to, or we'll investigate to see if we can make it configurable.
I think we can hold off on commenting until we have a better sense of what's going on.
Okay.
But is anyone interested in looking into this? I think is more of the question.
Yeah, I think we can probably also include that into the Slack message that we send out later to see if anyone's interested in that. So the next one is Akri forgets custom discovery handler registration when we started. Looks like there might be a PR for that already. Oh, so I think this one is expected behavior, right? I think we talked about that last time, maybe.
Yeah, I think I saw this issue come up a couple weeks ago and just responded to it. Let me refresh to this. Yeah. So essentially it is, we put the onus on a discovery handler to notice when its connection with the agent has dropped and to re-register with the agent. So the flow is discovery handler registers with agent. Agent now knows it's available. Configuration is applied. It now knows to just call discover on that discovery handler. If the agent errors out, it still has those configurations that it knows that it wants to discover for, but it no longer knows the list of discovery handlers that have registered with it. We don't maintain that state, while we do have the state of the configurations. And so we put the onus on the discovery handler to notice, because it is a streamed connection, to notice when that connection has been dropped and to re-register. That might not be well documented enough. And as a first issue, and the second issue might be that maybe we do want to maintain a state of what discovery handlers have been registered. I think those are worth discussing.
Right. Yeah, so I guess this is not a bug, but it is expected for what we have right now with the flow of how we reconcile with the discovery handler and agent. So yeah, I think we can discuss about it more to see if we want any change for that or keep it the way it is and have better documentations.
Does anyone on this call have opinions about that?
I think the way it works is quite nice, in fact, because you won't have to clean up things afterwards if there's one handler that disappears. So I think having maybe a whole section creating your own discovery handler in the documentation that covers more in depth what's needed to do that could cover this issue, as well as the other one with the handler's name.
Yeah, and I think one issue here with this is that the agent will delete. I think the issue that Alexander is pointing out here in the issue is that the scenario that goes like this: agent restarts on startup, it notices that we have these instances that were created, but there's no longer a discovery handler for them. So it assumes that those instances no longer exist and it deletes them. And I think what Alexander's saying is, I want my brokers to persist and my devices to persist, even if the agent dies. And I think that's a fair request. With a shared device, this is an OPC UA scenario, so it's a network-based device. We have a 5-minute delay before we delete those devices. So in theory, you have 5 minutes for your discovery handler to recheck in. But I think that is a fair, like, I think that this is a worthy request. Like, the behavior is expected, but we do have this weird scenario where if the agent restarts, we essentially are deleting all of these devices that we said exist. And in a scenario where you have like a centralized control plane where you're looking at your devices and managing them, maybe with Akri, that could be problematic. I don't have an immediate thought process on how we should solve this.
Okay, I think we can. I don't think this is high priority, so maybe we can put it in investigating, and then we can think about it more. If we have any more thoughts, we can. Everyone's welcome to comments on the thread. So the next one is Akri core components are restarting very often. The controller and agent are restarting a lot. Oh, is it related to this issue that we just saw? Um,
No, I think that's a kind of a consequence. When it's restart more often, he has more the issue of getting his devices deleted.
right. Okay. So this is probably its own issue, and this one causing this one to restart as well. Okay.
This one makes me from the description, well, the error message that's shown, it reminds me of another issue that exists that is about when the agent cannot reach the control plane, I think.
Yeah, exactly. This is a valid issue. So essentially, anytime the controller and agent are Kubernetes operators, so they're watching for changes from the Kubernetes, notified by the Kubernetes API about changes to either of those custom resources. And it looks like what's happening here is anytime that watch fails, the controller or the agent restarts, which I thought we looked into fixing with a newer watch that we were using. KubeRS is the Rust Kubernetes client that we use, that library, and we switched to using their watch API to hopefully handle this, and it looks like it's not being handled, but this is a really important one to address.
Okay, so I think this is a legit bug, and we should have more people look into that. Yeah, so I will put this one to investigating, and hopefully we'll have someone who's interested in that and looking more into this. So the next one is multiple device plugin sockets are created for a single instance. And Kate, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact details on this, but Audie and I were looking into it. And it's essentially a race case condition where, oh, okay, now I remember. It's a race case condition. So when a discovery handler says, I've discovered foo and foo zero, sorry, I'm bad examples right now, has discovered foo 1 and foo 2. What Akri does is it essentially creates a device plugin. And the steps for that is first you create a socket that you're listening on. And the second is you register with Kubelet saying, hey, I'm a device plugin. In between those two steps, the discovery handler may say, I found foo 1 and foo 2 again. And the agent may try and do that again. So that's one race case. The other is that in between that serve and that register, if the register fails, the serve is staying alive. And so the result is we'll have additional sockets that we have device plugins on that aren't the device plugin that we are advertising. So the one that we advertise is the one that ultimately connects, but there may be other ones that are still living on in the Akri agent that aren't being used. So it's a kind of messy situation that we should resolve.
Right. Let's see what the potential solution is. We should add
So
the
yeah,
instance.
Audie and I started working on the implementation. It wasn't as simple as we hoped. But he has a branch where he's been working on it. And the idea is we basically have a status for an instance. It's either offline or online. And the proposal is to add a connecting status so that we know something is trying to connect. And we don't try and make a new device plugin when something's in that connecting status.
Right, and the connecting status, it comes with the instance, or
So this is, I think I'm overloading the term instance, which always happens with Akri. But this is before we've even created an instance CRD. This is a device we've discovered that we're in progress of.
oh, okay.
So we don't actually create an instance for a device until the first list and watch, until Kubelet has called the device plugin for the first time. Before that, we just are preparing it and saying that we're knowing about it. And so that status is connecting, and then it becomes online once the device plugin pings it.
Okay, that makes sense. So Adi is already working on this one.
Yeah, I would go ahead and assign him to that. You should have the branch for it.
So I will move this one to in progress. Okay, the next one aside from the rush deprecated by the author, package two-way. Okay, so it looks like here we already have, or it seems like we already know what we need to do. Basically, just wait for the multi-part to migrate to the mem /r and warp. So basically, we're waiting for external dependency to update so that we can bump the version as well. So I think there won't be anything that we need to do at the moment on our side. So this one, I guess I can leave it at the backlog. And if the package is updated, we can also bump the version as well. The next one is UDEF discovery handler discovers parent device without the filter property. Is this one related to what Nicholas was doing?
Yes, in fact, I think it can be handled by this, because from what I understand, you were having two, well, the parents and the child that were matched by your UDEV query. So you could be grouping them using the new feature, but I don't know if that's really what the issue is there.
I think, I don't know if the work you have, Nicholas, solves this. Essentially, this was unexpected behavior. It looks like a device was being discovered because its parent had a property, but it didn't. And I think that was undesired behavior or undocumented behavior, one of the two. I think this is something Andrew ran into. Yeah. So essentially, when you look at query the properties of a device, which maybe it means that yeah, I think this was weird because the environment variable for, or the property for the device should be for the specific device. But the parent was also being discovered. So I thought it might be good to look into how we're looking at properties for a device and how we're matching on them, because something might be going wrong there.
Well, from what I see in the device path, the part with PCI 00, etc. It looks like they are the same device, in fact, because they both are USB on bus 1, device 2, and the one with colon 1.0 is just the first function of the device, but it's the same physical device, so it won't be surprising they have the same ID serial.
That makes sense. Okay, so what you're saying is your fix does solve this because it would group them together as one instance.
If you set the grouping parameter to true, of course.
Okay, now I'm super excited. Wonderful. Okay, well then maybe we can comment that this should be solved by maybe we can just link the issue to that PR.
Yep. Let me see which one. Is it this PR? Improvement way to group devices of the same tree.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will.
You go to the development tab on the right, all the way down very bottom where you
Alright.
see the other issue. Yeah, and press the setting button. You should be able to look up the other one.
That'll be 550. Is it 550? Yep. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I'll put this one in progress as well. And once we merge the PR, that one will be done. And the last one here, Eugene and I were working with OPC clients, and they were using a ProSys OPC UA simulation. And what happened is the OPC discovery handler, they got the OPC URL from the server, but the server didn't really pass in the IP address back, and instead they pass in the DNS, which in this case would be OPC test instead of this IP address. And so what happened is we pass in this OPC test to the broker, and I think the broker doesn't have the DNS to resolve this address, so it will turn to an error. And me and Eugene were looking into the code where this is the OPC discovery handler code where we want to, I saw this to do where I think we were planning to maybe do a check to make sure it's IP address instead of DNS. And I think this might be related to what the issues here that we're seeing.
Yeah, those definitely seem related. I think that sounds good to personally to go ahead and try and make the change and see if it solves that issue.
Yeah, I think I assigned to myself because I'm interested in working on this one, but I just wonder if I guess I kind of don't understand why we need to get the URL from the server if we already have the IP address. Because in this case, they return back like a DNS name instead of an IP address. I was wondering if there's any way we can translate that back to the IP address, and I don't know if that's feasible, where comparing to why can we just use the IP address that we have for the discovery handler and pass it to the broker.
It's been a while since I've looked at the OPCUA implementation, but I do know that OPCUA is pretty specific about what endpoints permit what type of information, accessing what type of information. So think there does need to be a validation that the discovery service for an OPCUA server is on the same IP address as the like application endpoint. So that would be something I would want to double check, but I think that is usually the case for the ones that we're talking about because we're not using a global discovery server. But that might have been part of it, like anticipating the use of a global discovery server. Or trying to follow the OPCUA spec. But I still see what you're saying of if we can ensure that the IP address is the same, we could just swap out, put in the IP address and use the rest of the URL.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking is to still do what we do now to get the application URL from the server. And if they return something other than IP address, then maybe we can pass in, we can use the IP address that we have instead of the application URL that they pass back. Unless we can find some way to resolve the application URL, in this case, the OPC test. But I'm not quite sure how we can do that at the moment. Maybe I can look into it more, and if there's nothing, then I think the temporary solution would be just using the IP address if the returning URL is not an IP address.
I don't know OPCUA much, but I don't know if there's something like virtual host or something similar. It can cause some issues. If you can have multiple kind of host name for the same IP that correspond to different nodes, you can run into some issues. If you just swap out the host name for an IP address.
Right, yeah, that could also be an issue.
Yeah, I can drop links to the OPCUA spec. I think that's a good place to start with this, to kind of understand. Because I believe we were kind of following the calls that it specifies you should use. I'll do that now. I'll look for it.
Okay, thank you. So I'll put this one to investigating, and I will look into it more. And yeah, that's all the open issues that we have in the past 2 months, I think. And if anyone is interested in working on any of them, feel free to assign to yourself and then leave any comments in the thread so we know the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Harrison.
Yep.
All right, looks like we're out of time. I'm really excited for us to, get this new release out soon. If anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the Slack. And I'll talk to you guys next month. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.